Welcome to Around the Paw, Season 1, Episode 11. And it's good to be back with everybody this week, especially after a Clemson Tiger victory on Saturday against Charleston Southern. Certainly was enough to take a little bit of the bad taste out of everyone's mouths after the opening season opening loss to Duke. And we're going to talk about the win over Charleston Southern. We're going to talk a little bit about the Tigers' next opponent, Florida Atlantic University, here on this week's episode. But first, let's introduce the crew. I'm Garrett Mitchell, joined as always by Griffin Barfield, Clifton Kennedy, and our special guest tonight, Clemson Sports Media's own Dustin Black, who hosts Football Chalk Talk, and it's a video series that dives into film breakdown and what Clemson and their opponents are doing. Think about it like the most high-tech film study that you will ever find on the internet. That's what Dustin does, and we're glad to have him on with us tonight to break down exactly what the Clemson Tigers are doing, where they failed and where they've been successful over the season's first two games. So let's just jump right into it. Griffin, let's start with you, man. I mean, you're the one that's on campus. What was the talk around campus after Saturday? It was certainly not exactly an auspicious start for the Tigers. That's about as nice as we can say it.
I think, you said that perfectly. And I think every single group chat of mine blew up as soon as that, the first quarter was going on. Just like, what are we doing? And I'm the guy that's like, we're fine. Let the game play out. But it certainly was scary. I was in the press box for Saturday's game, and, it was a little bit uneasy, a little bit too silent, if I had to describe it. But, I like to see how Clemson did battle back. There were a couple of big plays that, got the crowd going, and, I think the community around here, the culture is going a little bit better. So we'll see how we do this Saturday and go into obviously probably the biggest game of the year in a couple days from now.
Absolutely. And Clifton, just from your perspective, man, what were you seeing on Saturday? Like I told you, I was probably fortunately unable to watch on Saturday. I was driving to Atlanta and listening on the radio, and during that first quarter, I said some things I certainly would not repeat in church to my preacher, but goodness gracious, that was just an ugly start. An opening touchdown drive and then back-to-back possessions that just went off the rails in a hurry.
It really was, man. I literally thought in my head in those second two drives, I was like, oh my God, here goes Duke again. But like you said, they bounced back. They got that first quarter out of their system and then kind of progressed through the second quarter. And then in that third quarter, man, we put it on them, man. And, during his post press conference and, interviewing Cade, we asked him, like, what was that halftime room like? And he was just like, he was just calm. Dabo was super calm, super laid back, like, let's just get it together and let's go. And so to me, that's how Cade is anyway, So I'm just happy that we showed a little bit of the downfield passing game. We showed a little bit of it, but we definitely need to get more into that. So.
Well, and for those who don't know already, Clemson did lead Charleston Southern 24-17 at half, and they pulled away with 42 second half points. 66-17 was the final score. But through probably the first 10 to 12 minutes of that ball game, it certainly did not look like it was heading in that trajectory. Clemson did jump out to a 7-0 lead on a touchdown pass from Klubnik to Antonio Williams, and you started to think, okay, well, the offense is showing some signs of life. Looks like maybe they've improved from the Duke game till now. And then that's just when things went off the rails. Going for it on 4th and 1 from your own 29-yard line resulted in just a horrible fumble that was returned down to the 1-yard line. That was cashed in by the Buccaneers. And then on the very next drive, Cade gets flushed out of the pocket. He's got 5 defenders breathing down his throat, and he throws an interception that, frankly, I'm 38 years old. I've watched football my whole life, and that is one of the more horrendous interceptions I have ever seen in my life. And the decision to throw that football was on many levels just incomprehensible. I don't know how else to say it. So let's bring in Dustin now. And Dustin, you break down film and you look at plays and tendencies and what offenses and defenses are doing. So when you broke down those two plays on those two turnovers, what did you see there? And where did those plays just go haywire and go off the rails?
Well, for sure, you got to look at the protection. I mean, you got the 3rd and 12 with the pick six. I mean, they're going to tee up on Cade and bring pressure. And it seemed like all 4 guys got home. And then, he's trying to just get rid of the ball. And then, even on the 4th and 1 where he fumbles it, there's a free rusher there. Even if Cade catches that ball, that play's dead. That play's getting blown up by that free rusher. So, that was the biggest concern for me is that, the offensive line doesn't seem to be on the same page quite yet. A lot of pass pro issues and stuff like that. So that's the kind of stuff that really concerned me about Saturday. And just like you said, having to go for it on 4th down, it wasn't just the turnovers. It was Clemson was struggling to move the ball. It was a lot of 3rd downs, a lot of going for it on 4th down just to move the change. It's something that, going forward, it's got to get better for sure.
And Griffin, one thing that was really just very concerning to me listening on the radio and then the bit that I did get to watch in the first half is that Clemson's offensive line was allowing penetration from that Charleston Southern front 4. And to me, that was very concerning. I'm not trying to denigrate or take anything away from Charleston Southern, but there is a huge disparity in talent there. And one thing we've heard all spring, all through the fall, into camp and into fall practice was this was an offensive line that was much improved. It was a unit that would be a strong suit. And then all of a sudden on Saturday, you've got an FCS level defensive line that is getting pressure at will in that first quarter. And I don't think you can blame anybody for saying, oh, well, here we go again.
Right. And I think that was probably, like Dustin said, it was probably the biggest red flag of that game because obviously, you rush Cade maybe a little bit inexperienced, just a sophomore year. I believe it's his 4th or 5th start, throws it into the abyss, gets a pick six. But I'm not going to lie. I'm concerned with this offensive line, especially against an FCS team with the caliber of Charleston Southern, which we have talked about before. I am very concerned because the ACC edge rushers. I will bring up Jared Verse from Florida State, and 10 days from now or so, he's going to be feasting. So it's more of just get the chemistry together, get it together. I don't, you got to work as a unit. That's the point of the offensive line, and I know it does take a little bit. It takes between 2 to 3 years, but this line is developed together, and at this point, it's kind of like what is going on. Because you only lost guys like Jordan McFadden last year. So everyone's pretty much together. So it's like, what are you kind of doing,
Right. And Cliff.
One thing. Go ahead. So the one thing I was going to say is I heard this during a press conference this week is that the Florida Atlantic, I'm kind of going ahead a little bit, but the Florida Atlantic offensive line is a lot bigger than ours, and so the defense is just gonna have to be careful with that too. So, but yeah, our offensive line definitely needs some work.
Right, and Dustin, to you as you look at the film on the Clemson offensive line, is this just to you? What's the reason for the trouble? And what can you single out based on what you've seen? Is it just a scheme issue? Is it missed assignments, or is it just a general lack of being unprepared? Or maybe do you throw it all into a hat and just draw one out and take your pick?
Yeah, I think that you nailed it with that last one. I mean, I think it's a lot. I think, it's a left tackle that hasn't seen a lot of game reps. It's them not working to communicate really well. One thing that Charleston Southern was doing that I picked up watching the film twice, and I'm no football coach, but whenever Clemson was lined up on the right hash, if Clemson had 2 receivers out there and they had 3 defenders out to the boundary, well, they sent the third, and that got them on a 3rd and 10, where Cade threw another pass kind of haywire, but didn't get intercepted that time. Well, the next time they get the football, Charleston Southern sent the same exact blitz. Now, it was 1 receiver to 2 defenders to the boundary, but they just sent the extra boundary defender. Now, that's just something that, when you look at film leading up to a game, like you would hope that like Cade kind of can key on that. And even if he doesn't see it on film, that he could recognize that in game and kind of pick up like, hey, they got 1 more defender to the boundary. Last time they sent this guy, maybe I should go ahead and, flip Will Shipley to the other side and keep him in to protect or, communicate that somehow. But just little things like that just don't seem like they're getting picked up by, whoever's setting the protection, whether that's, the offensive line or Cade communicating that with Shipley. you know?
Well, and guys, you talk about communication, and it seems to a degree that that's matriculating down throughout the rest of the offense and into Cade Klubnik as well. And that's one thing that was just the source of so much talk on Saturday, particularly early on. And it harkens back to that Duke game, is what's going on with Cade's decision-making. And I think everyone realizes he is still a young quarterback. He is a true sophomore. And this was, if I get my math right, this was his third career start and only fourth career game in which he's played meaningful snaps. But he's had an entire offseason to prepare. He was the guy at the end of last season, coming in after one series of the ACC championship game. He started the Orange Bowl and played the entire game against Tennessee. And then he's had an entire offseason to prepare. And it just seems like the same mistakes were happening over and over again. So, is this a maturation issue with Cade Klubnik, at least in terms of slowing the game down for himself, and what's factoring into his decision-making that's leading to these turnovers?
I mean, for me at least, I think that, Cliff, you were at the press conferences, is that Dabo said the game slows down every game you play. And, it was obviously game one, tough atmosphere, primetime, Wallace Wade Stadium. I expected growing pains from Cade. Game two, your home debut, pretty much the same thing, like a little bit more of growing pains. Now you got to whip it into shape. I think Florida Atlantic's kind of the game where you have to eliminate those bad decisions, because I think I saw a stat, if it was like if Cade eliminated, like 6 to 7 passes, Clemson would be 2-0, which is a stretch. But I did see that like on Twitter or something like that. But I think, it just comes down to making the right call. I know even during that interception, there were just open guys pretty much at the same time.
Everybody was open.
Exactly.
Every one of them was open.
So I just think it's just a little more, put yourself down the field and just you're settled in now. You the game will slow down for you. But I think you're going to see that against Florida Atlantic, that you see the game slow down, continue to slow down, and you see a little bit more of that maturation, which at least I hope. I don't want to be, the back end of this a week from now.
But
yeah, so I just looked up. Yeah, well, I just looked. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, what I was going to ask you, and you've been to the press conferences, and Dabo still has full confidence in Cade Klubnik, and he has reiterated that over and over again, and it's the same. We've seen the same refrain that he had with DJ Uyunglele as well. But Dabo's a guy that trusts his guys. He trusts his quarterbacks, and right now he has full confidence that Cade's going to turn it around. And what are we hearing from him, or what did you hear from Dabo in that regard? And it kind of segues into the next thing that we're going to talk about. Cade did get better as that game went along. We've talked about the bad, but there's a lot of good that we can start to talk about as well, because we did start to see the game slow down for him as you kept going second quarter, third quarter, and into the second half. He finished with over 300 yards passing and I think 4 or 5 touchdowns. So you did start to see flashes of the talent that's there.
Yeah, you definitely did. I mean, once he settled in that game and sat back and started looking at his progressions and making the right reads, that pass to Beaux Collins for that touchdown was right on the money. And Beaux Collins makes a dumb mistake and starts celebrating, but still scored. But D-Rob and myself, you can see us when he's running by us, like we're there. And
did you throw your hands up like, what are you doing?
Oh,
man?
I wanted to. I wanted to so bad, man. I was like, what are you doing? Go. So, but yeah, I mean, you could definitely see Cade get better as that game went on. One thing I will say is this can't happen against Florida State though, because they do have guys like Verse and like other guys. But one thing I have heard about Verse is he hasn't been playing that well this year, because he's only got like 2 or 3 tackles. I think I heard that from Anthony or something like that. So, but yeah, that's kind of unheard of because he's supposed to be so good. But yeah, speaking on Cade, he'll get better. It's just going to take some game. I hope it doesn't cost us another loss.
Well, and Dustin, let's talk about that long touchdown pass to Beaux Collins. And Beaux, it was really, in many regards, it was kind of his, even as a junior, it was his breakout performance as a Clemson Tiger. 137 yards receiving, that long touchdown catch. I believe it was 67, 69 yards in that neighborhood. But it was finally one of those plays where we saw a Clemson receiver get that separation, get open to the middle of the field, and then he was just able to take off. And, he slowed down. He celebrated prematurely, but he had gained enough separation that he was able to drag the guy the last 5 yards into the end zone. But when you dissect that play, Dustin, how is he able to get so wide open there? And is that an encouraging sign that we saw these Clemson receivers start to gain some separation on Saturday?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that Garrett Riley, one of the strengths of his offense is that he's really good at manipulating the safeties. So if you want to play with two high safeties, he's going to try to manipulate one of the two to free up some guys. So if you watch that play, that's just a simple mesh concept below. I forget who was doing the mesh. I think it might have been Brenningstool and Randall, but even they were wide open. And why you saw that safety creep up the field a little bit and why Beaux Collins got a half step is because that safety was creeping down, trying to defend that mesh a little bit. But for me, whenever I watched Beaux play on Saturday, it looked like he was trying to make a play. And when's the last time you saw that with the Clemson receiver where it was like, I got the ball in my hands, I'm going to make something happen. Regardless of how many defenders I have on me, regardless of what route I'm running, when I get this ball in my hand, I'm going to the touchdown, and that was encouraging to see because I think that, with our wide receiver core, I put it in baseball terms. I think Antonio Williams is a guy that can consistently get on base for you. Like he's good at the underneath stuff. He's going to be consistent. He's going to give you, what you expect out of him every game. But, Clemson needs a power hitter. If he's just consistently getting on base, we need someone to hit some home runs. We need an alpha. We need some guy to just, be able to take the top off of defense. And it really would just make everyone else's job easier as well. So, when you're looking at Beaux and you're looking at, what he can build off that, I think it's just taking over that wide receiver room and taking over the leadership role and just becoming that alpha wide receiver that this room definitely needs.
Right. And on the film breakdown, you talk about the two high safeties, and it was exactly the same game plan defensively that Duke played. Those two high safeties trying to take away the middle. Did you notice any difference in the play calling between the Duke game and Saturday against Charleston Southern and how Clemson was able to combat that two safety look?
No, not really. I mean, I think all the stuff saying that, Dabo's meddling in the offense is kind of really untrue. I think that this is the Garrett Riley offense. You see a lot of his concepts. I did a whole film breakdown of the TCU offense last year, and a lot of it looks really similar. It's just the personnel's different. I don't know how else well to put it. TCU kind of feasted off a lot of smaller speed guys, and we haven't really seen that yet. We've seen a little bit of it from Tyler Brown. I think he's shown some flashes of that. But I think that, we're going to get that look a lot. I think that teams have kind of figured out that, we don't really want to win on the perimeter. We want to win with Shipley and Maffa. So I think teams are going to load the box. I think teams are going to, make us beat them on the outside with our perimeter weapons. And until we prove that we can do it, we're just going to see it over and over again.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it'll be interesting to see how Garrett Riley and Dabo and the Clemson coaches approach things offensively going forward, because it's one of those situations where if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. And I think as long as teams find a defensive scheme that works, then more and more teams are going to continue to try to play the Tigers that way. But speaking of the defense, and just a couple more points to touch on before we talk a little bit about the Florida Atlantic game coming up this weekend. And, we talked about the negative aspects coming in at the top of the show, but there was a lot of good to talk about too coming out of Saturday. And one of those was the defense. And again, granted, FCS opponent Charleston Southern was never expected to be in contention in that ball game. But anytime you hold a team to under 100 total yards of offense, then that's a good day, no matter who you're playing. The Buccaneers had 73 total yards of offense. It was a banner day for the Clemson defense, and we finally started seeing some of those players we expected to be big contributors flashing out there at Death Valley.
Right, and I was just once again fascinated by the freshman play. Once TJ Parker, got on the edge, Peter Woods played some snaps. I think that, they're both going to be huge cornerstones when it comes to, weeks to come. But I was really impressed with the secondary, especially, Jaden Lucas. I think that, and Dabo in the press conference was very big on him. He's just a bruiser. He wants to get contact. He wants to get the ball out of your hands. And that's what he did. I believe that he did poke the ball up for the Wade Woodaz, recovery and touchdown. So I was just very impressed. And, that's why I told everybody on campus that, or my friends at least, is that we're going to be fine. The defense or the offense, the CSU offense only had like 8 total yards when it was tied. So I knew for a fact that there was at least, Clemson was going to pull away. And at some point, and Charleston Southern was never going to come back because, at that point, the defense is so notoriously good that, you're not going to get a string of first downs or at least a field goal,
Yeah, that defense was lights out. And, the Jaden Lucas, something Dabo said in his post-game press conference is he's night and day different than last year. And,
right.
And of course, I think he had an injury maybe last year too, so that might have been part of it. But yeah, so but yeah, that defense is lights out, and so I was very encouraged by the defense. Something else I was really encouraged with is after the starters on offense came in, or after they went out, every quarterback led a drive for a touchdown.
Yes.
And that was super encouraging, for me, because normally in past seasons, you put in a backup quarterback and we go 3 and out, or we get 1 first down, or, they throw a pick, or, something crazy happens. And then the opposite team scores a touchdown, or a field goal or something. They get points. But, this time that didn't happen. And so I know we're talking about the defense, but the backups on offense really showed out.
Yeah, and Jay Haynes as well. Dustin, I think he could end up being a guy that, look, he played very well. He scored 2 touchdowns in his first career game, 1 rushing and 1 receiving. And if he proves to be that versatile, then, you could see a guy like Jay Haynes being worked more into the offense. And certainly he did nothing on Saturday to see his reps diminish. I think they're only going to go up.
Oh, definitely. I love Jay Haynes. I thought when we recruited him, it was kind of a mystery guy that, we were getting him from a small school in Alabama. No one really knew much about him. And, here's Dabo taking another 3-star. And then you see him on the field and you're like, yep, yeah, it's definitely has some juice to him. And I think he's probably the fastest running back we have, if I'm being honest. I love Shipley. I love Maffa. But that kid just has a different level of burst, something that, when he gets to the open field, if we ever see that, I think he's going to pull away from defenders. And he's definitely someone that I would like to see worked into the offense a little bit, even if that's just in the passing game. I know reps are hard to come by in that running back room, how deep we are. And more so than Jay Haynes, I think every running back that we saw on Saturday, you were like, is this really our 4th or 5th guy? It's just a embarrassment of riches in that room.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And before we move on from Charleston Southern and spend our last few minutes talking about the Florida Atlantic game coming up on Saturday, how about a shout out to place kicker Robert Gunn III? He had just about as nightmarish a first career game as you could imagine at Duke. 2 short field goals that were missed, really blocked on low kicks. It just to the point where Dabo even said it openly. We're opening up the kicking competition. It's there for anybody to take. Well, Robert not only retained his job, but he goes out on Saturday. He makes every single one of his point afters, and he makes his first career field goal. And that just had to be 9 for 9 point afters, 1 for 1 field goals. And that had to feel like a weight was lifted off of that young man's shoulders.
Especially for a freshman too. I think having not as bad as a game, but having, as a nightmare of a start for Robert Gunn in his first ever game as a Tiger, some people might not be able to come back from that. So, I tip my hat to him. I think he was 7 for 7 from extra points, and he did hit a field goal, which, is huge, and it just builds confidence. So nothing but good things for the kid. I'm hoping that, he has a little bit more experience under his belt this weekend, but he looks good to me. He looks great. Besides, the whole Monday mishap, but we'll look past that for now.
Yeah, I'm past Monday. I'm past Monday night. Look, he was, like you said, 7 for 7. We even saw, I think we even saw a backup kicker in there for a couple of extra points. And and so he did a great job.
All right, guys. Well, we've got about 6 minutes to go here on this week's episode. So let's talk about the game coming up on Saturday. It's a night game. The lights are coming on at Death Valley, and everybody knows that that's a special time. If you've never been to a night game at Clemson, then it's something that I think you've got to put on your bucket list. And Florida Atlantic is going to get to experience that for the first time. The Owls are making the trip up to South Carolina from the Sunshine State. So what can we expect from Florida Atlantic? I know Dabo in his press conference on Tuesday, one thing he pointed out was they do have a fairly dynamic quarterback. Griffin, you said they've got a big offensive line. So, again, it's not a team that Clemson can just walk into the stadium and expect Florida Atlantic to lay down, because they're not going to do that.
Not only that, they're just an experienced team. I think they returned like almost every single starter on the defensive side. And their quarterback's good, Casey Thompson. He played for Nebraska last year. He was with Texas 2 years before, and then the whole, Quinn Ewers revolution kind of happened there. But, this team is like a Duke team, but maybe not as talented, I'd say. That's pretty much all. I think, Clemson does get tested against a team that has experience, and I don't think it will go like the way Duke goes out. But, on a Parents' Weekend game, 8 o'clock, I think, it's a Tiger win, but, I expect it to be hard fought.
Yeah, definitely. I during a press conference with Will Chipley, I asked him, like, what does he think is going to be a problem on that defense? And he said he straight out told me, he said there's not going to be a problem. He said, but their interior defensive line, he said, if we can control them, then it's going to be a good day. And I looked at their defensive line, and I think every single one of them is over 300 pounds, and they're huge. Yep. And Dabo also said that they're one of the biggest defensive lines that we'll probably face this year, because every single one of them is 300 plus. And so that's going to be a test for our offensive line. If they come out on top, if the offensive line does well against this defensive line, then I'm going to be really happy, because like I've said from the get-go, I've been really high on this offensive line out of camp, and they kind of disappointed me a little bit, last game. But I'm super excited, to see if they can handle that defensive line.
And Dustin, based on any of the film that you've seen from Florida Atlantic, where does Clemson attack them? You talk about their big defensive line, and it works both ways. Where does Clemson go on offense, and what do they have to do defensively in order to be successful?
Well, offensively, and this isn't just a Florida Atlantic thing, but this is kind of a Clemson offensive thing, is that, I just want to see, more early down success out of the Clemson offense. I feel like a lot of times we're just stuck in that 3rd and 7, the 3rd and 10 range, or even 2nd and 10. We're just not being too successful on first down. Duke, we were actually 1 of 8 on 3rd downs and 5 yards plus, but we were 5 for 5 on 3rd downs less than that with less yardage. So, I mean, that's the key for the Clemson offense right there, staying on schedule. If pass pro is going to be an issue, the last thing you want to do is stay in 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, and let defenses just tee off on you. But just, everything you guys said, I think their nose tackle is actually 350 pounds, by the way. He's a big boy.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
he is.
Yeah. And they got athletes on the back end. They may not have been like highly touted recruits or anything, but they're definitely, they got some speed. They got some athleticism. Their corners are a little small. I don't think they have one defensive back over 6 feet tall. So you'd like to see, Brenning Sewell get involved over the middle of the field. You'd like to see Randall impose his will on some of these guys, stuff like that. But I think run game, I think that Clemson starts with the run, opens up the passing game a little bit. And I'm encouraged with this game. I think that, you look at the point spread and Clemson's only favored by 24. I think that's interesting. But, I'm encouraged that Clemson found a little bit of a groove against Charleston Southern, and hopefully they come out swinging. And then, defensively, I just want to see them dominate. I was a little disappointed with the linebackers at Duke. I thought, Trotter and Carter didn't really live up to, what we had hyped them up to be off season wise. So I just want to see them, show us the linebackers that they are, feel good about themselves going into Florida State. And really, I mean, the most encouraging thing so far for me is that we haven't really noticed the secondary outside of the plays that they've made. We're not really complaining about, any individual secondary players right now. They're pretty much doing their job. So you want to continue to see that. Florida Atlantic has a couple of speed guys, a couple of guys that really can run. I know Dabo talked about it in his presser today, but that number 1 for FAU, he's legit. He's a legit speedy guy. He's going to return all their punts. He's going to return all their kicks, and he's dangerous if he gets open and gets some space.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And look, the fact remains is that Saturday night is the final dress rehearsal that remains before Florida State comes into Death Valley. And why that game is a noon kickoff is a story for another day. We're going to talk about that on next week's show. But yeah, I've got my own thoughts about Clemson, Florida State kicking off at noon in Death Valley when this is one of the marquee games in the country as far as I'm concerned. But first things first, you have to get past Florida Atlantic. It's coming under the lights, 8 p.m. on Saturday night. So before we wrap it up tonight, does anybody want to reveal their or let out of the bag their Gridiron Guru picks for the Clemson Florida Atlantic game, or are we keeping that a secret for a few more days?
Yeah, we'll keep it a secret. All
right. Well, we're keeping that a secret, so you'll just have to go to ClemsonSportsMedia.com and check out our Gridiron Guru weekly picks. All of us here at Clemson Sports Media, we pick 5 games from across the country, always one of them being our Clemson Tigers. And we try to put our prognosticating skills to the test. I was 4-1 last week. Just throwing that out there. I think I won it last week. So, if anybody wants to get out their pen and pad, you can take notes. That's fine. You can cheat off mine. It's okay. But, yeah.
I was 4-1 the week before. Don't forget that.
Oh, well, it's fun, and I think we'll all be picking Clemson. So we all know that we've got one win right off the cuff coming into the week anyway. So it should be –
Clemson's the only one that let me down Monday or first week. So
no, me too,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I got confidence in them, man. They're going to be fine.
Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to that Saturday night. And I tell you what, guys, I've got to work Saturday night and when I say I work Saturday night, I work for Spartanburg County Parks Department, and I take care of baseball fields. So when I say I work on Saturday night, they tell us the time to be there. We drag and line the fields, and whenever we're done. We go home. So I hope they tell us be there at 5 o'clock. If they tell us be there at 5 o'clock, then I'll be home by 8 o'clock if all goes well. And if not, then I'll be riding around the ball field, groomer, with my earbuds in and listening to the ball game until I can get out of there. So it's the best of both worlds. I can make money and pull for Clemson at the same time. So
there you go.
Absolutely. And that's going to do it for us for this week. And again, we thank Dustin Black, our very own here from Clemson Sports Media. He's our film guru. He can break things down and just talk about things that to the untrained eye we can't see or we don't recognize. And Dustin, we appreciate you coming on and breaking things down from an expert perspective for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And check out Dustin's work. You can find it also on Clemson Sports Media here on YouTube. And Dustin does a series called Football Chalk Talk where he breaks down film. He looks at Clemson's opponents, and it's just a wealth of information, and it's highly worth your time to check that out. And also, we encourage you to follow us at CU Sports Media on X, formerly Twitter. I still call it Twitter. I'm old school, but follow us at CU Sports Media there. Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube as well, and we certainly appreciate the growing number of viewers here on Around the Paw every single week. It's just a pleasure to bring you these shows. And so as we sign off, we want to let you know that on next week's episode, we are going to have another special guest. TJ Pettinger is going to join us. He's a Florida State insider and the host of the Fries and Slaw podcast, which is a Florida State show. And we're looking forward to having TJ on the show next week. And he'll give us some inside information and insight into Florida State and what's going to be a game that, quite frankly, provided Clemson wins this week. A lot of what happens the rest of this season will be predicated on that Florida State game. So we're looking forward to his insight as well.
Yep.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that's it for us tonight, everyone. We appreciate you tuning in. Again, Dustin Black, thank you so much. And now we'll just count down the days and the hours until 8 p.m. Saturday night in Death Valley when the lights come on in Clemson for the very first time here in 2023. But until then, I'm Garrett Mitchell, along for Griffin Barfield, Clifton Kennedy, and Dustin Black and the Around the Paw crew saying good night, everybody. And as always, go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Tigers.